sat on the bus on my way to school, listening to music and paying little to no attention to the other students. At one of the stops, my mind snapped back to reality. I looked towards the small house. Tommy's house, I thought. A hand slipped through the drapes of the window and waved the bus driver to move on. He's sick, I thought, paying no large amount of attention to the situation. The day flew by. I watched the local news channel after school, and what I heard paralyzed me. Tommy's entire family was murdered that day by an unknown suspect. After hearing this news, I moved back up to my room and quietly fell asleep. The next day, I sat on the bus. We drove past Tommy's house, and the bus driver, unaware of Tommy's family's fate, stopped at his home. As I was about to get up and explain to her what had happened, something caught my eye. A pale hand slipped through the drapes of the window and waved the bus driver to move on. I sat on the bus, terrified. My grandmother grew up in the slums of Prohibition-era Chicago. Her family lived in a small house near the harbor, and one of her earliest memories was a particularly hot summer when, seeking respite from the heat, she and her sister discovered a seldom-used section of boardwalk near an abandoned warehouse. Every night, for several weeks, the two girls would make their way down to the dock and sit together on the edge of the pier as the sun went down. My grandmother vividly, and for a time fondly, recalled the feel of the seaweed between her toes as she and her sister dangled their feet into the murky water. It wasn't until years later that she returned to the piers and found that the warehouse had been demolished. Curious, she made an inquiry with the Department of Planning and Development. Apparently, the warehouse had been owned for a time by the mob, who was using it as a base of operations for a local prostitution racket. It had only been uncovered when an associate began disposing of rival hookers by fitting them with concrete shoes and dumping them into the harbor. Investigating officers had recovered nearly 24 bodies from the waters of a secluded pier nearby. How had the bodies been discovered? A passing fisherman spotted some of the victims' hair floating near the surface of the water, like seaweed. I was in my bedroom, doing the typical at-home teenager thing, staying up late, digging around the depths of the internet, and generally not paying attention to anything other than what was on my monitor. It was the early morning, around 2 o'clock, and everyone in my house was asleep but me. The room was nice and warm despite it being the dead of winter, since we had the windows replaced last week. We had been losing heat, especially in my bedroom, through some old storm windows, but the bitter cold was now kept outside. I don't remember what I was doing. I think in the terror that consumed me I must have forgotten. I heard a noise at my window, not the sound of a bug flying into it or the shrubs brushing against it. No, this was an odd noise. A thumping sound. Something I had never heard before. I didn't think anything of it initially. Whether that was because I genuinely believed it was nothing, or because I didn't want to find out what it was, I can't say. But I sat there for a moment and just listened to it. It was distinctly arithmetic. Thump, thump, thump. It only lasted 15 seconds or so, and then stopped. I shuddered, but shrugged it off, and, after spending another hour or two browsing and consciously not looking through the window, turned my computer off and fell into an uneasy but uneventful sleep. This morning, after the sun had been up for a few hours, and the things that go bump in the night were doing whatever they do during the daylight hours, I walked to my window and spent a few minutes trying to replicate the sound I heard. I tapped the window, bumped it with some soft objects, even locked and unlocked it, but I couldn't for the life of me figure out what had made that sound. Nothing I did was even close. I figured that the event had been a fluke, and the day was normal until the evening. My dad arrived home from work at the usual time and decided that the house was too stuffy, so he came into my room and went to open the window. We're in Texas, so winter evenings are sometimes very comfortable, as was the case today. Never in my life before that moment have I genuinely wished to be deaf. My dad forgot to unlock the window before trying to open it, and when he pulled it up, it produced the same noise I heard last night. My window only has handles on the inside. James arrived home late at night. He unlocked his front door and stepped into the darkness of his apartment. "Hey, honey, I got that early flight home. I'm in the bedroom. There's been a power cut." James was surprised but happy to hear his girlfriend's voice. She had been away for a few days on a business trip. Okay, I'll be right there. He stumbled through the darkness and into the bedroom. He carefully made his way over to the bed before sitting down. Hey, sweetheart, he said as he felt his girlfriend's arms wrap around him. Jesus, Abigail, you're freezing. He shuddered as he felt her cold skin against him. I know, the heating has been off for hours. Come on, baby, get in bed and help me warm up, she said, attempting to put on a cute voice. James got undressed and placed his phone on the bedside table before climbing into bed. He removed his glasses and moved close to Abigail. He was startled for a moment when his phone began to ring. He picked it up and looked at it, but didn't recognize the number. He brought it to his ear and answered. Hello? Hey, honey, it's me. I'm still at the airport. I couldn't get that flight, but I'll be able to get one soon. I'll probably be home by morning. Hello? James? He felt an icy hand grip his shoulder. I waved goodbye to my friends as I stepped off the bus and headed to my house. I was super excited to get home and see my parents. They hadn't talked much at all yesterday. As a matter of fact, they just stayed in their bedroom all day. They haven't been feeling well. I ran up the stairs of the front porch and swung the front door open with a big, cheesy grin on my face. However, when I opened the door, there was no one in the den. The television was off and the house seemed to be abnormally quiet. I took a step in and started calling out, Mom? Dad? I called. I knew they were supposed to be here. Dad had the day off and Mom didn't have any plans with their girlfriends until next week, right? I placed my backpack on the ground next to the couch and walked into the kitchen to check the calendar. October 5th. I was right. Dad took this day off so him, Mom, and I could go see a movie together. They've got to be here somewhere, I thought to myself. Then it hit me. School let out early today because of a busted water pipe. I looked at the watch on my wrist. It's only 12 o'clock. They may still be sleeping. I headed back through the den and slowly opened their bedroom door. Surely enough, there they lie. A sigh of relief escaped my mouth and my grin returned. I tiptoed over to my mom's side of the bed and pulled the covers back. I was greeted with the same sight as the day before. She lay there motionless, eyes glazed over, mouth agape. Her skin was a pale white and her hair was beginning to thin. The soup I gave her yesterday sat on the bedside table. It was stale now and she hadn't even touched it. I'm beginning to think they don't want to feel better. I placed the covers back over her head and grabbed the old soup and left the room, slowly closing the door behind me. I decided not to wake either of them, considering they must need their sleep. I'm sure they will be up for it tomorrow. Until then, I have a ton of psychology homework to be done. We're doing this paper on people who have some type of disorder, causing them to live in denial of even some of the most obvious things. I couldn't imagine living like that.